Hundreds of academics and professionals from around the world have signed on to a letter of support for the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which is accepted as standard in dozens of countries, saying that the letter notes the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition is an invaluable tool. The IHRA definition has been adopted around the world in more than 30 nations, saying modern anti-Semitism often intentionally conflates hatred of Jews with hatred of Israel, with Jew haters cleverly trying to mask or conceal their bias against the Jewish people by focusing obsessively on Zionism and the actions of the State of Israel. With us now to talk more about this definition and what it means and some of the controversy it's generated here in Israel and around the world, Russell Shalev, advocate with the International Legal Forum. Sir, thank you so much for being with us today on Yom HaShoah.
It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm speaking to you today on Yom HaShoah, which really underscores the fact that anti-Semitism never disappeared. It simply metastasized or changed forms. And as you said, modern anti-Semitism often presents itself in terms under the guise of hatred towards Israel, hatred towards Zionism, the Jewish national movement. And that's where the IHRA definition comes in. The IHRA definition gives us examples of some of the most common forms of contemporary anti-Semitism.
Like what?
So it has classical anti-Semitism, like stereotypes, anti-Jewish stereotypes, conspiracy theories. It has Holocaust denial, and the most controversial, let's say, the examples are those that cover modern or contemporary anti-Semitism. So the denial of the right of self-determination to the Jewish people, comparison between the State of Israel and Nazi Germany, use of classic anti-Semitic imagery when talking about Israel, also accusations of dual loyalty to diaspora Jews.
I want to ask Russell about, get you to respond to some who argue against this definition, some who believe that, anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, and you can criticize a nation like Israel, perhaps unfairly, adversarially, aggressively, one-sided criticism, very biting criticism. It doesn't rise to the level of anti-Semitism if you're criticizing, however harshly, Israel's treatment of the Palestinians, or its policies around the world, or its views on defense or security or regional issues. Doesn't rise to the level of Jew hatred.
Let's be very clear. The IHRA definition itself says that criticism of Israel, that is leveled towards any other country, is not anti-Semitic. So the claim that IHRA somehow stifles freedom of speech is simply a straw man argument. Okay. Furthermore, IHRA itself isn't a legal code. It doesn't prevent any or penalize any sort of speech. However, it gives us tools to identify what sort of speech, depending on the context, can be anti-Semitic. So when you are calling for the Jewish people to be disenfranchised, to lose their one and only state, when you're saying that Israel crucifies Palestinians or drinks Palestinian blood, things like that, then yes, that is anti-Semitic. Arguing with Israel's policies is not anti-Semitic.
Are we seeing in social media, in criticism, that people just transfer the word Zionism instead of Jew? That it's not really that secret anymore. They just don't want to talk about Jews or Jewish people, and they just throw the word Zionism instead as cover. Is that what we're seeing?
That definitely is something that we're seeing. Right, we're standing about 80 years after the Holocaust, right? Anti-Semitism is still not is still seen as somewhat a taboo, even though that itself is gradually eroding. And we see that modern anti-Semitism stands at the nexus, really, of three extreme ideological movements, whether it be the far right, neo-Nazis, white supremacism, the far left, which is obsessed with Israel, or radical Islam. And so many of these groups find it easier to speak about, or politically correct to speak about, Israel and Zionism than Jews.
Tell me about the effort to get this adopted in more nations. I mean, there was a withering debate in the United Kingdom over adopting this definition, many other countries as well. Why is it such a controversial thing?
Well, so since the IHRA organization adopted the working definition at its plenum in 2016, so the definition has been adopted by hundreds of countries, governments, civil society institutions. Because of its popularity, so there has been a backlash, unfortunately, by groups that are extremely ideologically invested in promoting hatred of Israel. So the backlash against the definition shows its strength, right? If it
wasn't effective, then you would.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's a really important definition and a really important topic to discuss, especially today on Yom HaShoah, with anti-Semitism and violent attacks against Jews rising around the world. Russell, thank you so much for being with us today. Appreciate your time in the studio.
Thank you.